Hello, folks. Welcome back to the Catholic OCD Podcast. I'm your host, Nick Nolfi. Today, I am joined in the studio once again by my beautiful wife, Amanda, and we are going to talk about the biblical relation between men and women, between husbands and wives, and what is the biblical order of the family structure. Stay tuned. Hope you guys enjoy the show. Okay, so when it comes to St. Paul's terminology about the relationship between a husband and a man, and when it comes to the biblical terminology of marriage, you can see people misinterpret this in many different ways. Some people go to the extreme of like the husband has so much dominance over his wife that he just tells her to jump and she says, how high? And then other people can use and twist the scriptures in a way where it basically takes away any terminology of structure between the husband and wife in the family system. So before we go ahead with this, be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast. And without any further ado, I want to welcome again my wife, Amanda. Amanda, how's it going?
It's going good.
That's good. That's good. So how many times has this been now since you've been on the show?
I think this is my third.
Third time? You're getting the hang of it now?
Maybe.
Okay. So why don't you start off by telling us, number one, what's it like to be married to the best person in the world?
Oh, I mean.
Me.
Every day is just like living a dream.
Well, I can't argue with you there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been married. It will be in July. It will be 20 years. 20 years.
It's crazy.
Yeah. I think we were 12. I think we were 12 when we got married.
It feels like it.
Yeah. Well, it's because time flies when you're married.
Yep.
To a man like me.
Right.
You were really looking, my wife was really looking for somebody. She was kind of like, that was back when that John the Baptist look was really, Barabbas look was really in. And she just couldn't stay away.
I couldn't.
So when it comes to the Bible, which I don't know how many people even read the Bible or care about the Bible anymore as far as guiding their family. But is there biblical structure in the Bible? And, of course, one of the first things that we go to is the book of Ephesians, which I think people have to understand that the book of Ephesians is actually about the church in general. And Paul wants to point out that the family actually is a mini version of the church. That's the whole point. Like the church itself in whole is the bride of Christ. Mm-hmm. And just like we would be an example of how, just like the church is the bride of Christ, how you are the bride of me. So that's Paul's purpose here, is to show how you and I in the family are actually an icon or an image of Christ and his bride. So I want to read through, this would be Ephesians chapter 5, when it talks about be subordinate to one another out of reverence for Christ. Wives should be subordinate to their husbands as to the Lord, for the husband is the head of his wife, just as Christ is the head of the church. He himself the Savior of the body. As the church is subordinate to Christ, so wives should be subordinate to their husbands in everything. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ loved the church and handed himself over for her, to sanctify her, cleansing her by the bath of water with the word, that he might present to himself the church in splendor, without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy as she might be holy and without blemish. So also husbands should love their wives as their own bodies. He who loves his wife loves himself. For no one hates his own flesh, but rather nourishes and cherishes it, even as Christ does the church, because we are members of his body. So when it comes to that wives being subordinate to the husband terminology there, and the husband is the head of the wife, just as Christ is the head of the church. Asking you as a wife, as a mother, is there any terminology right there that you would say bothers you or makes you feel uncomfortable or weaker?
No.
Why?
Because, I mean, I believe that God said, structure for the family with the husband being the head. And, I mean, I'm okay with that. I believe in that. But that's when he also says for the husband to love his wife as he loves the church.
Yeah.
And he obviously, when you think about his love for the church, that's a major kind of love, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that what's the greatest love that we see in the Bible? According to the Bible, what's the greatest act of love that anybody's ever done for anybody?
Jesus dying for us.
Yeah, that Jesus gives his life.
Yeah, gave his life for us.
So who does Jesus give his life to? Is he gives his life to his bride.
The church.
The church. Mm-hmm. So Jesus's relationship with his bride would be that of one of self-sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And I think that the biblical terminology is that the male is tied to sacrifice. So whether we see in the Old Testament, every time we see sacrifice offered, sacrifice of atonement offered, throughout the Old Testament or the New Testament, you always see it connected with the male, because that's actually a training of, just as this animal gives its life for the atonement or appeasement of sin, like even the priest or even the males being involved with that sacrifice, that's really a training for the man himself to be a sacrifice himself for his family. Now, why we can understand how the biblical terminology is that Christ does sacrifice himself for for his bride, and Christ loves his bride, we would understand that the church, who is his bride, does not get to dictate or command Christ to do things.
No.
Christ is the head. So when it comes to being subordinate, or other translations show submission, like a wives are supposed to be submissive to the husband, what does that word actually mean? Like, what does submissive mean to you? Like, what's it mean to be submissive?
I mean, I believe that when it comes to big decisions and the goal of a family, or, you know what I mean? Like, you're the one who's in charge of that final decision, and I need to submit to that.
But even as far as, like, one of the things you said, which I would definitely...
Now, I mean, if I absolutely disagree with you, I mean, we have a problem.
Now we can't straighten out. But...
no.
But it's not just about, like, what color do we paint the room?
No.
Break down the word. Submissive comes from two words. Sub, which means under. Mm-hmm. And then mission. So under the mission, like, you're behind my mission as the husband.
You support each other. You know what I mean? I have your back. The wife is supposed to have her husband's back.
Yeah. And in a radical way, because certain people could read this and be like, oh, well, yeah, it's easy for Paul to say he wasn't married. He's so chauvinistic. But Paul starts this off with saying husbands and wives submit to each other, which to even Paul talking to Ephesus, like in that Gentile context, women had no rights. Women, a lot of times women were just viewed as like pieces of property. By Paul saying that husbands need to be submissive to the wife and the wife submissive to the husband, that's a very radical understanding. If you read the Bible, you should realize that Christ, I believe, elevates the position of women to the honor that it's supposed to have, that I feel like is just missing in today's theology. And I think that good or bad, people can really misuse this verse to where when you talked about like being behind me for my mission. But the question is, as a husband, what is my mission? Like, what was I sent? To lead your family
to Christ.
Yeah, like that's why I'm here.
Right.
That's why I'm
to make
called.
Sure that we're all on the same path and focusing on our goal is to get to heaven and be with each other for eternity.
Right.
Our salvation.
Right. So if we were to view it as like, well, you have to be submissive to me, like my mission is that, we have spaghetti and meatballs. Like, and that's my mission. Well, if that's the mission.
Sometimes that is your mission.
Well, that's a goal. That's a little mission. But that's not like why it's good to like for you to want to please me.
Right.
And vice versa. Like, and when you have goals that are not against God, things that you want, things that don't go against the greater mission,
right,
then I should want to make you happy. And that's what Paul is saying, like, there are little missions that the husband and the wife submit to each other, meaning they want to make each other happy. Mm-hmm. But then there's the great mission of us all going to heaven.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, if you're a father and a husband and you make $1 billion a year and you live in the nicest house and you have a Batmobile and you do this and you do that and you're very popular and famous and your family goes to hell, you are considered a failure, not a success. So when Paul is talking here about being submissive, it's basically, it's me as a husband saying, I'm called to die for my family. It doesn't literally have to be a literal death, but it means that like my life, I don't get to live just how the desires of my flesh want to live. I can't, if I earn money, I can't just take it and not feed the kids, not allow them to go to the dentist, not allow them to play sports because I have to, have a Ferrari.
Right.
Or because I just want to, everybody else eats oatmeal and I eat a steak.
I mean, your job as a husband and father is a sacrifice.
Right.
A huge sacrifice, as is being a mom and a wife.
Absolutely.
And having 4 kids in our life, and just every single day, it's a sacrifice for each other and for our children.
Yeah. And our sacrifice, any sacrifice is only good if it's sacrifice offered to God. So if any culture, if they killed an animal as a sacrifice and then they don't offer it to anybody, like there's no purpose of that. And that's why, like really, like in Catholicism and in other Christian traditions, people understand that certain people have a vocation, like a calling to the priesthood. But marriage is a vocation.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody is called to be married.
To be married and to have a family.
Yeah, not everybody's called to do that. So when you are called to do that, the question you have to ask yourself is, who are you called by? So if people are getting married, I feel like sometimes people get married just because, well, I'm Christian. I want to be able to be intimate with somebody without it being a sin. Mm-hmm. So therefore, that's my calling. I mean, in that way, you might be getting called by something else, but you're not necessarily meaning you're being called by God.
Right. You're not going into it for the right reasons.
So therefore...
Or for the big picture, I should say.
Or for the big picture.
Yeah.
And this is why, as a husband, I have a certain job as the head, and you have a certain job. Like, I have no problem saying that the husband, if the husband's the head of the head of the family, I have no problem saying that then the wife is the heart of the family. And there's a reason that when God takes Eve from Adam, she doesn't...
If the heart's not pumping, it dies. You die.
Yeah.
So the family unit...
The glue...
would fall apart.
Yeah, you're the glue behind the family. And there's a reason that God takes Adam, or he takes Eve not from Adam's head.
Right.
And not from Adam's, like, behind.
From his side.
But from his side. But they still have different duties. They're
of course,
equal.
You have different roles, but you're a team.
Right.
And you go through this, you go through marriage, you go through raising a family. I mean, you have to be in sync, and you have to have the same goals, and you have to be together. And it's not always easy. It's hard. Marriage is a huge commitment. It's hard sometimes. Having children, having a family. I mean, it's beyond, nobody could prepare you. Nobody could have prepared me for being a wife and a mother. Do you agree? Like, nobody could have truly prepared you for being a father and...
No.
I mean, it's totally, as a kid or as a teenager, and you're like, oh, yeah, I'm going to get married, have kids, it's going to be great. And it is, and there's nothing more wonderful, but at the same time, it is the most difficult thing, like, ever. Do you agree?
I agree, and I agree to the point of, like, what really is the glue behind a marriage is grace. Like, we're dependent on grace, and especially you have to have right theology behind it. Because one of the things that makes it easy is like, okay, well, if I have to be submissive to your mission, in a sense, even me as a husband have to be submissive to, and you have to be behind and support your mission, and you have to support my mission, and even my mission as, in the headship of the family. One of the things that really makes that easier is if you have the same mission. And if the same mission is to get our family to God. And we, of course, want to provide nice things for our children, good opportunities. But our number one goal is to make our children good.
Right.
To make them good people. To introduce them to the faith. To make sure that they're living the faith. It's why if you're taking your kid to every sport and buying them the most expensive iPhone when they're as soon as they come out of the womb, and do everything, and you don't take them to church, and you don't feed them the faith, then that's a problem. And even like the Catechism teaches, parents are the first and primary teachers of the faith to children. Mm-hmm. Not their CCD teacher, not their Sunday school teacher, not their pastor or priest. It's parents. It's our job is to make sure that we're guiding our children. Where an issue comes in is even it's funny, like when you read Paul's writings, there's not necessarily a lot of commands for the wives. There's a lot of commands for the wives to be submissive to the husband. You don't notice as much a lot of commands for the wife to love their husband. But you see the command for the husband to love the wife. Like, go read Ephesians. You'll see Paul multiple times telling the husband to love the wives more than he tells the wife to love the husband. Why is this? And I think you could see this in Peter, where Peter talks about, you know, in a certain sense, I think women are tougher than men. They do some things like, you know, bearing a child, you know, delivering this baby. There's a lot of things that they have to do. But in a certain sense, and everybody today gets so mad when I'm about to say this, but like, wives are, in a certain sense, a weaker sex, meaning they're not as physically strong as a male. So a man...
You don't think I could take you in a fight?
You could probably poison my food. I've eaten your meatloaf sometimes. I think 50-50 you did. But no, it's like my job, and this is why Paul is warning.
I mean, I feel like our strengths are different. It's not that a woman is weak.
No, I'm talking about, no, certain aspects a woman is stronger.
Right.
I always say this, hold a child.
Different...
You could hold a kid longer than I can hold a kid.
Right.
You're just naturally made for it. But there's certain things, physical ways.
Right, and I agree.
So a man
I could dig a pretty deep hole.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet you could. See, that's your thought. Murder.
I wasn't even thinking.
You guys, everybody heard that. So if I go missing, because my Italian wife dug a hole, yeah. So if you see my hand come up from the grave, just dig me up. And they'll be like, yeah, it was meatloaf poisoning. My point, though, is a man, Paul's warning, like, you have this strength physically.
Yeah.
You have to love your wife and treat them delicate. Not in a way like they're just made out of glass, but like your job is to protect her. Mm-hmm. And that's a terrible thing. If any woman's in a situation where the protector becomes the abuser, mm-hmm. It's a terrible thing. In the same way, if you're a man and you have a mission that you're doing of sacrifice, and the wife that's supposed to be supporting you is the one ripping on you and taking away your self-esteem, it's a terrible thing. Mm-hmm. So to do this right in the biblical sense, I think there are a couple key things. Number one, understand the mission. The mission is salvation. The mission is leading each other, sanctifying each other. There's Paul in Corinthians talks about we sanctify each other. This is why in Catholicism, in Orthodoxy, marriage is a sacrament. In certain traditions, it's not. Mm-hmm. It's a sacrament, which means it's actually a calling, and you actually receive grace from it. It actually gives each other grace for your walk in Christ. It teaches each other patience. It teaches each other, endurance. It teaches you each other humility. There's a lot of growth that comes through the sacrament of marriage. I think that's a key thing to help with it. Number two, understand the mission. Understand what your actual goal is. And it's very easy for us in this world, especially this busy world, materialistic world, jacked up, sinful world. It's very easy for us to lose track of the actual mission and make other things more important than the true mission. So understanding the mission, I'd say number three, one of the things that helps, and I feel like this has been lost somewhat in Christianity today, is the I'm going to pronounce this word wrong, the indissolubility of marriage. I think too many Christians today view marriage as a legal contract. Like, okay, this is the analogy I always use. Okay, let's say you had a white can of paint and you had a red can of paint over here, okay? Now, if we put these together in a legal contract where now this red can of paint and this white can of paint and this red can of paint are now legally bound together. They share in each other's finances and their Social Security and health benefits in their home. Now this is something these two are joined together legally. And now I think Christianity looks at it. They're joined together legally, and since they are joined together legally, this means that if they mate with each other, it's not a sin because they're under a legal contract. And then therefore, since they've been put together by the law, when they decide to get divorced, okay, now this goes over here, this goes over here, the legal contract is broken. Now, this pink paint comes up, let's say he gets married to, this other paint now, and now they're in that legal contract, and when they mate, it's not a sin. And then they split up, and now this person can be in this legal contract maybe 4, 5, 7 times. Married to somebody else is viewed as a legal contract. The question becomes, though, is that the biblical concept? And I say no. What actually happens is you have a white can of paint, a red can of paint. Once they're married by God, they mix together and they become one thing of pink paint. There's pink paint in here, there's pink paint in here. The question is, once you mix red and white paint together and you stir it up, can you ever separate the white from the red ever again? No. So that means once God has joined them together, then can they ever truly be broken apart?
No, they can't.
And this is why you have to ask yourself, the biblical argument, like sometimes people say, well, show me in the Bible one time where a baby was baptized, or show me this, or show me that. Show me one time in the Bible where 2 baptized Christians are married, one gets divorced from the other, and then marries another baptized Christian. Somebody has to just show me this one time. You'll never find it in the Bible. You will find clear things against it. And this is why Jesus says that, like, what God has joined together, let no man put asunder. So like in Catholicism, basically, the only question you have in the annulment system is, were they actually joined together by God? Did they have freedom of choice? Like, were they just forced to get married? Was somebody kidnapped and forced to be married? Did they not have the right state of mind when they were married? And if they don't have that freedom, then that could be something that's viewed as like, well, it was invalid. I personally think that's a very, very, very rare thing. Like, to be up there on the altar in front of everybody and saying this and saying that. And then like 20 years later, you're like, I didn't know what I meant. I didn't know what I was saying. Oh my gosh. I think that
Don't ever make that face again.
I think that's I just think that it's something that's misused.
Oh, it's definitely, it's a very difficult topic when it comes to divorce and the right to remarry. Obviously, as a Christian, to say that it's fine to get divorced and have multiple, marriages, that's definitely not what God intended. And if you read scripture, if you could disagree with that, then you got a major problem on your hands. But it's so difficult because there are horrible situations where you have a husband and wife and either the wife or the husband become abusive or this or that or become an alcoholic or start doing drugs. And it's like, does God want you to stay in that marriage? And that's a hard situation. And I mean, I do believe you're meant to stay and pray for your spouse and to help them. But then if you get to a point where they don't, change or, they're physically abusing you or whatever, then, I don't believe God would want you to stay in that situation. But then I don't think you...
It's different, though. Leaving a dangerous situation is different than getting married again. And this is where people...
It's a tough thing.
In today's world, we can't fathom no sex. Like, nobody can fathom this today. Mm-hmm. And so the idea is, well, what do? My wife was mean. My husband drank. Well, we're getting divorced, but, I have to have sex. So, like, what do we do? That's not really the biblical argument behind it. One thing, I'll read this in Corinthians. This is from Paul. And Paul says that, now in regards to the matter about which you wrote, it is a good thing for a man not to touch a woman. But because of cases of immorality, every man should have his own wife and every woman her own husband. The husband should fulfill his duty towards his wife and likewise the wife towards her husband. A wife does not have authority over her own body, but rather her husband. And similarly, a husband does not have authority over his own body, but rather his wife. Do not deprive each other, except perhaps by mutual consent for a time, to be free for prayer. But then return to one another, so that Satan may not tempt you through your lack of self-control. This I say by way of concession, however, not as a command. Indeed, I wish everyone to be as I am, but each has a particular gift from God, one of one kind, one of another. So at this point, Paul's saying, listen, people don't realize this. Paul knows what Jesus said. Paul knows, because he really quotes and paraphrases on certain things that Jesus said during his ministry. When Jesus says that basically there are men who are celibate, people who are celibate for the sake of the kingdom. Mm-hmm. Jesus talks about this. The eunuchs. Jesus was celibate. So Paul is celibate. Paul lives a single life. And Paul's saying it's better for people in the ministry not to be married than to be married. It's better not to, if you don't have to engage in that and you're in ministry, it's better not to be married. But he understands our human flesh, our human weaknesses. So he's saying, okay, it's better if you could be celibate. If you could have the gift of celibacy, that's the best thing. The worst thing is that you don't get married and you don't stay celibate because you can't stay celibate. Like, you're single, but you sleep around. Mm-hmm. Like, he's saying that's the worst thing. That's immorality. So if you can't control yourself, and he understands, he's like, I get it, then it's good. One man should have one wife. That, every man should have a wife. Every wife should have a man. And the purpose of this is, he's saying also, you fulfill each other's desires. You have a duty. The man's body's not his own, and the woman's body's not her own. This is why any spouse who does not want to engage in an intimate relationship, that's a sin. That it is a sin. It's a Christian spouse's duty to participate in that lifestyle with their spouse because they're one. And it's a self-sacrifice to each other. Except for Paul saying we can get consumed in anything. So there's certain times where both the husband and the wife say, listen, let's fast. Let's fast from this for a while. But then Paul's saying, if it's getting too tempting and, this and that, then don't let Satan use that against you. But he says this, but he's saying this isn't a command from God. but it's just my opinion that it's good for you to remain as I am, single. This is what he's saying. That's a gift given by God to certain people. Then he says, now to the unmarried and to the widow, I say, it is a good thing for them to remain as they are, as I do. But if they cannot exercise self-control, they should marry, for it is better to marry than to be on fire, meaning it's better to marry than to burn with passion. To the married, however, I give this instruction, not I, but the Lord. So now he's saying, to the married person, I'm saying this. This isn't my opinion. Like, when I was saying, like, hey, it's better for you to stay celibate, he's saying that's my opinion. But now he's saying, this one's not from me. This is from God. I give this instruction, not I, but the Lord. A wife should not separate from her husband. And if she does separate, she must either remain single or become reconciled to her husband. And a husband should not divorce his wife. To the rest I say, not the Lord. If any brother has a wife who is an unbeliever and she is willing to go on living with him, he should not divorce her. And if any woman has a husband who is an unbeliever and he is willing to go on living with her, she should not divorce her husband. For the unbelieving husband is made holy through his wife, and the unbelieving wife is made holy through the brother. Otherwise your children would be unclean, whereas in fact they are holy. If the unbeliever separates, however, let him separate. The brother or sister is not bound in such cases. God has called you to peace. For how do you know, wife, whether you will save your husband, or how do you know, husband, whether you will save your wife? Paul here is speaking to people who have recently converted to Christianity. So he's talking two categories. Baptized, believing Christians who marry. Paul's saying once that's a sacrament. This is not just a legal thing. If a believer is married to an unbeliever, or two unbelievers are married, that's just a legal contract. But if two believers are married, and it's a truly valid marriage, and the mixture happens by God, once it's valid and happens by God, then that's it. And what he's saying is, if that's the case, if a wife leaves her husband, then that's it. You got to stay single, or you go back to the husband. And if a husband leaves his wife, that's it. You got to stay single, or you go to your wife. This is in a valid marriage where the white and the red have become one. Now, this is why the only way is you have to look, well, was it valid? Was it an unlawful marriage? Was somebody forced into it? Was somebody kidnapped into it? And this is where, in Catholicism, when they look at an annulment, because the Catholic Church does not allow divorces, but they will give out annulments. This is where it has to go into this huge investigation with all these different people involved, and they're looking at not what happened after the marriage. Well, after we were married for 10 years, they had an affair, this or that. They're like, yeah, we don't care. They look at like before the marriage. Was it truly a mixed thing? Once, if it's viewed as it's mixed by God, then that's it. What ends up happening today is a lot of people don't want to go through that painful process to see if it was a valid marriage or if it's not a valid marriage. But biblically, the way it is it's a permanent thing. But then he's saying, but what happens if a Christian marries a non-Christian? Then his command is, you can't just be like, well, listen, since you're not a Christian, I'm going to leave you. He doesn't want you to divorce your spouse. If, say, two people aren't Christians and then one of them becomes a Christian and their spouse doesn't want to become a Christian, should they just say, well, since you're not going to become a Christian with me, I'm going to leave you?
Yeah, no.
He's saying, how do you know? Maybe you'll save that person.
Right.
Maybe you will be the one who brings them to God. But he does say, if that unbeliever leaves you, now that person is free to get remarried. Why? It wasn't a sacrament. It wasn't done by God. God doesn't marry non-believers to each other. He marries believers to each other. And that's a hard thing, especially in this day and age.
Oh, that's very hard. But divorce is, I mean, it's like nothing to people anymore. Marriage is, I do believe unfortunately, a lot of people just, yeah, okay, let's get married. Oh, yeah, I don't like you, or this isn't what I thought it was. They get divorced, they move on, and it's sad. It's sad, but it's hard at the same time, I don't know.
I feel like you could see even the the church. Marriage is an icon of the church, but you could see, just like divorce is so popular today, even among the churches. This church splits from that church, and they split, and there's a split, and a split, division among the church. And this is why you go to church. As soon as the pastor was mean, this priest did something. A lady yelled at my kid. Oh, that's it. We're a big throwaway society today, and marriage is also one of those things. And you have to realize, like, one faith, one church. That's what Paul says in Ephesians. The bride of Christ. Christ sanctifies us. And we have to have this mission. A marriage is a calling to join in the sacrament and to help it sanctify each other. And then you produce children and you bleed them and give them as gifts to God.
And now more than ever, I mean, Satan is just, he's out there. And I mean, he's just ready to devour your marriage, your family. I mean, split you apart. I mean, I have felt it so strong, over the last couple of years, and it's getting worse. And you see this stuff take place, and it's scary and it's heartbreaking, but we have to cling. Us Christians need to cling together and stick together and fight for what's right. I just thought of that song.
The Beastie Boys.
The Beastie Boys.
Yeah.
But
that's your problems. You're listening to bad music.
Yeah. I got to go.
The mark of the Beastie Boys. That's
back in the day, my church used to make you
burn those CDs.
Burn your CDs, your secular CDs and your secular music. Gosh, I got rid of such good music for no reason.
Well, back then you could actually burn. Remember, you could burn CDs, meaning you copied them.
Yeah.
So they were like, "You burn a CD?" Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I burned a lot. Yeah, you got to see my collection. We were burning and turning.
No, but we have to, like, I mean, it's tough out there, and we need to obviously stick together as Christians, stick together as husband and wife, stick together as a family, and
you wonder how much Satan hates families.
Oh my gosh.
And I think that's, like, you look at it today, divorce rate. Yeah. Just your standard traditional family, one man, one woman, you get married, you have kids, you go to church. I mean, it doesn't sound that difficult. Now, this guy married this lady, she left, he left, they married somebody else, they had another kid, they married somebody, they had another kid, that kid they had a boy, he became a girl, and then he married this guy over there, he became a squirrel, and then they had a child that was a cat, and now is crapping in your litter box at school.
Yeah.
And Satan is just like, yes.
And people could get upset and disagree with us, but it's the truth. And people are afraid of the truth, to stick up for the truth. And, I mean, it's so simple. God created man. He created woman. And
I also feel like
to have somebody tell you otherwise, or you have to back down to all this stuff. I mean, what my kids are hearing in school already, and what they come home and tell me. I mean, it's terrifying. And we need to, and I tell my kids, I said, listen, you stand up for what is right at school. And if anybody gets upset with you or you think you're going to get in trouble, have them call mommy. Because I'll be on the news in the morning, but
With your meatloaf, your shovel.
yeah, right. But it's crazy. But I would just pray for God's protection, pray for his direction, and have your focus, like you said, as husband and wife. You got to have the same mission and the same goals.
I feel like today wives don't want to participate in that, being behind the mission of the husband and under his headship. And a lot of husbands don't want to lead. They don't want to take that position of leading their family. Like, we have a Bible study, way more women come than men. Like, as women go to church more than men. Yeah. It's almost like, now when you see men who take this serious, then you see something, really special. But like, men are forsaking their duty as priests of the home, as spiritual priests of the home.
And now, the focus has just become so much on all the worldly stuff that doesn't matter. The most big successful jobs and money and listen, we all want
busyness.
We all want to not worry about money and have problems, or you want the bigger brand new cars and big homes, and and it's easy to get caught up in that. I would love to have updated, and you always want more.
Amanda doesn't like our red
we have a very ugly
countertop
kitchen right now, okay? And I would love to have the money to go spend and get a brand new kitchen. And it's okay to work towards that, but people focus, like their whole drive in life is to have those things. And obviously, it's not important.
I said, all you have to do is memorize the Summa.
Yeah.
And you'll get your kitchen.
At the end of the day, what are you living? Why are we here? Why are we living this life? And none of this comes with us,
There will be one thing, like, out of our home. Let's say out of our home. Name like two things that come from our home where we could be rewarded for in heaven.
You mean like each other?
Our
family.
Our family, our kids, if we can get our kids to lead. And then what's the other thing that we do at our house?
The Bible study?
Bible study.
Yeah.
And like, those are things that, like, unless, I will admit, like, if I get to heaven and I'm standing at the gates and God's like, you were close, but man, your countertops were ugly. And we just, listen, Nick, this is a classy place.
No, he would. He'll say, Nick, you should have given your wife, you should have let her buy countertops. It would have made your life a lot easier here on Earth.
Yeah. And I'll be like, but God, she just literally murdered me 5 minutes ago. And they're like, but,
No.
What would be your advice, though, to wives, mothers out there? I was going to say, how would you encourage them? But then you made that noise like the raccoons make when I shoot them. But
no, it's hard. And there's days where, why are you laughing? It's hard. It's rough. Yeah, there's joy. There's
you ain't like you're married to like Ted Bundy or something like that.
Oh my gosh. No, just having children. Okay, we have 4. Having, you work on marriage is a full-time job. I'm not saying it's hard and it's not good. I'm blessed. Why are you?
I'm not.
You just asked me to give.
I'm listening. I'm enjoying. I'm just laughing. I'm smiling. I'm happy.
Okay.
I'm happy with you.
I'm saying, as a mom and where I'm at, I'm reaching out to the moms that are struggling. And there are days where you feel hopeless or you feel like, oh my goodness, you can't keep up with your household work. You can't keep up with the kids.
Mama said there'd be days
you can't
like
make your husband happy. No, you're just, and it's easy to get discouraged and to feel defeated. You feel defeated. And I'm there, and I experience it, and I live it every single day. But just don't give up. And you have to, every single day, some people have to do this every single day. I have to do this every single day. When I get up in the morning, it's like I have to remind myself of what matters, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and my main goal in life, and that's to be a good wife and to be a good mom and to be close to God, and hope that people see that in me, and hope that my kids see that in me. And just
what would be some of the good things that you what would be some of the good things that you enjoy, that you look forward to, you would like
what we do on a daily what we do.
Or daily or weekly
I'm old
basis.
School. I love being home. And I love being home when my husband's home and when our kids are home and we're together. And I don't care. We don't have to be doing anything special. I love when we're all home together. And obviously going to church together as a family. And it brings me joy doing that for our kids, that our kids get to go to church with their mom and dad. And there's a lot of people who don't do that. And so those are the things that, truly make me happy. It's the small stuff, just us being able, with us being so busy and obviously both working now, it's to get up in the morning and have our coffee together. And we have a sunroom. We call it the blue room because it has blue tile, but I don't get to go there often, but I love it. And just being able to sit there for 10, 15 minutes with my cup of coffee in the blue room, with you, and those are the, my favorite times. And the kids love being with each other too.
Yeah.
It makes them so happy, when we're all together. And
I would say though,
it's the most important thing.
We try to date.
Oh, yeah, you absolutely have to make time for
other
each
people.
Other.
No,
Yeah.
just
no. I only have a few.
Yeah,
people I meet up with now and then, but
you'll probably kill them all.
It's awful.
But no, we try to date. I feel like once a week, maybe once every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe if it's just something small.
We went through years where we never could.
Oh, yeah,
obviously,
when the kids
with the
are
kids
so
being
young.
little, and you have to worry about a babysitter and paying for a babysitter or finding somebody to watch your kids. And now we're getting to a point in our lives, and it's been nice that our oldest is old enough to sit with the kids for a couple hours, and we could go to dinner and have that an hour or two of quiet time with each other. It's very important. You have to constantly date and work,
keep the romance,
work at it to keep it there and keep it going.
I'd say notes, texts, randomly text each other. You love them, nice things like that. I used to say I enjoy taking walks, which we still do, but my wife sprints the whole time. So it's literally I walk and I'm like, yeah. So anyways, the kids are doing good in school, and then she's at 40 miles ahead of me.
It's my natural
sprint.
Walk.
It's a sprint.
I'm not sprinting. It's more effort for me to walk slow.
We don't all weigh 100 pounds.
Oh yeah, okay. I wish.
I'm twice the size of you. I'm having strokes as we're walking, and I just want to have a conversation. And all I see is the back of your head in the distance. You're
I talk
walking
loud. You could hear me.
No, I hear you. Yeah, I heard you. We walked through the woods today, and I just heard her from far away. She's like, "Oh, this looks like a good spot to dig a hole." And you mark out your territory.
See, guys, don't you want to be like us?
Yeah.
Aren't you just?
It's
you want to be happy. Be like us.
No, but it is. I enjoy, sometimes we get the chance to read the scripture together. We went on vacation, taking walks, listening to our catechism in the year with Father Mike, going to church, Yeah. And then cooking together.
Yeah.
Although you yell at me a lot when we cook.
I'm Italian. That's what I do.
Yeah. What do I do wrong?
Nothing.
What do you remind me? I open up the cans of tomato sauce every time.
You have to wipe them.
You got to wipe them. I've heard this 50 million times in 20
all
years.
All the years we've been together, then just do it. And then I won't have to yell at you to do it.
My meatballs are too big. Right?
Yeah, I mean, if you guys want to eat a softball, then, you know.
Meatballs are too big. What else do I do? I never brown the meat enough with the country style ribs and the pork.
Yeah.
Yeah. But we go through the same thing every time. And then by the end of it, then it's a nice meal. That would be a good cooking show. Get 2 Italians in there.
No, I always said we could have a TV show. Like my family, we would be so rich.
You get that kitchen.
I would get my kitchen. I would. No, like I just think, I mean, people would be truly entertained.
They would.
By our everyday life. Because I can't make this stuff up. I mean, if you guys even knew half of it, it's just.
So, yeah.
It's good, though. It's all good. You know
Paul
what?
should have made things about, cooking together.
Yeah.
What I also do enjoy is how when you talk to the audience, you look at the monitor. The camera's right there. Like that's the TV. Like nobody, when you look at the huge room, nobody sees. You're like, right, guys? Because you guys know, you hear me.
I don't know what I'm looking at.
That's you. I mean, look, right there. That's your camera. See that?
Hi, guys.
Look right into that camera, right there. Now, look over that way. See, and that's how you usually wave, and nobody's over there.
Well, maybe I'm waving to people outside.
Yeah.
They want to know what's going on in here. I'm telling them.
Yeah, they hear a lot of yelling.
Telling them, get married, have kids. They said it would be fun.
It's good. It's great.
It's great.
It's good.
I'm fine.
It's good. It's
Everything's fine.
It's good. It's good. All right, guys. Well, this is a little bit of Ephesians.
Yeah. Stay strong, guys.
Corinthians.
Stick together. Work through it.
Yeah.
Don't give up.
So a lot of biblical marriage advice today from an author who was not married and didn't know what it was like to get in arguments over how to make Sunday sauce in the kitchen. So I want to thank my beautiful wife, Amanda, for joining us again. She truly is
Thanks for having me.
A beauty. And I do believe this. Women are a more beautiful creation than man. I think that's a biblical truth. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this was helpful. See you guys next time on the Catholic OCD Podcast.
God bless.
Peace out. I'm supposed to say peace out. Yeah, we're still live. See how she yells?
We actually have to be at church at 1:45, and we got to go home and get ready. So.
I'm ready.
There we are.